All right. Good morning, folks. It is Wednesday, July 29th, 2020. And this morning, I've got a very, very special guest, special person in my life, and definitely a special guest that you guys will thoroughly enjoy this morning, Mr. Keith Callaway Sr. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff: faith, family, business, a little bit of everything. So let's get started this morning.
It is ultimately important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life, and then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our special guest this morning. And first, I want to thank him, number one, for being on here, even when he's not a guest, at 4:30 a.m. local time out there on the West Coast. This guy, man, has made a huge impact on my life and the lives of plenty. I tell him all the time, man, he is a father to a bunch himself, but man, he's got a lot of extended children out there, both in the asphalt paving world and beyond. So, Mr. Keith Callaway Sr., welcome to the show, man. And I am exceptionally grateful for you to be here this morning. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
So, I first want to just kind of have you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, how you grew up, and what life looks like today. Take us through a quick little synopsis of your life.
Well, born in Portland, Oregon, to a lower middle class family. My parents both worked, hard workers, and when I got married, I thought, well, I wasn't comparing myself to my parents, but I thought, well, I can do better than the low-paying job that I had, and so I decided to go out on my own. I saw some of my wife's family doing that, and so I went out on my own and just did. One guy that worked for me early on said, "Man, you know what you should call your company? Anything for $1." And so we did a lot of things. We trimmed trees, we cleaned gutters, we did anything, literally anything for $1. So that's where it come from. Today, 7 grown children. A house that somebody laughingly called recently the compound. 4 acres, we got our equipment here and a couple of buildings and all of that, and that's come from pretty much nothing.
That's probably a fair assessment, man. You got mom next door, you got the equipment, you got all the grandkids and the kids running around. So I would definitely say that is probably a fair assessment to call it the Callaway compound.
Yeah, it works. It definitely works.
Yeah. So this week's topic is obviously on family, and I couldn't think of number one, a better person to have on the show. As I started to have guests, I text your son. I don't know if he told you this or not, but I said, man, I really want your dad to be the first guest that I have because of, number one, the impact that you've had on my life. And I think that you probably don't even realize how big that is. But just the person that you are, and the person that people see you be every single day, and the advice that you give and the guidance that you are able to provide people from your life experience, from your faith, from the balance that you've created between family and business, and just everything. And I have incredible admiration for the life that you live. And so that is the reason that I wanted to have you on during this series about family, because I think you're the perfect person that I know to speak about it. And so I want you to kind of just describe what family means to you in your life.
Well, you hear people say, "Oh man, my kids are everything. Family's everything." And I would say that below God and kind of doing what he wants and listening to his opinions. I have to say that's pretty close for me. That really is. But I was encouraged early on from some older gentlemen at my church that the way you make your family first, your kids first, is to live, use a biblical term, you live in understanding with your wife. It means you need to study her, you need to understand her, and the better you do that, then the better relationship you're going to have with her, and the more security your kids are going to have. There's going to be no doubt in their life that they're going to have these parents in their life, and that they're going to be on the same track the entirety of their life. And not only was that good advice, but that has held very true in my life. And when I say, yeah, family's priority, it started with that idea, and that my wife was my first part of my family. And so, yeah, that's super important. Pay attention to the top priority, and then the others will fall into place. They will.
Yeah, I think that's interesting perspective, man, because, in today's world, we have family dynamics that are, all different, and, from some single parents to some parents that live together that have some challenges. And so that alignment is just so important, right? It's to be in alignment and to, live your life, kind of shoulder to shoulder, right? Not horn to horn, as we say in business, right? And
Yeah.
In a marriage and in a relationship, the number one thing that I think children want to feel, and any family wants to feel, even beyond your children, right? When people come to your house, they want to feel that alignment. And it's when I sit here and think about it, it's probably the reason that I feel so comfortable and attracted to your family, to want to hang out with you guys, want to be part of it, is that alignment, right? It's like that crystal clear alignment between you and your wife, between all the kids and even all the grandkids. Everybody just kind of has this rhythm to them about faith and family, and all the things that are important to you guys have cascaded down and duplicated themselves dozens of times at this point, right?
Yeah.
Into the children and grandchildren. So last night when we were chatting briefly, you had mentioned 3 things that everyone was looking for in life. So I'm gonna call those things for today's conversation the big 3. And you said, joy, peace, and fullness. And I want to talk about that and dig in a little bit on those 3 things, and how you think that people can achieve those 3 things, and then what it means when you actually have them. Because I think I look at you as a person that has those things, and if not all the time, an exceptional amount of time. And so talk about how people can get those 3 things, and maybe at a time in your life where you didn't always have those 3 things, and how you ended up acquiring them.
Well, that's a big subject. We could go a long time. So joy and peace are things that we can't create. And it's not to say that they're environmental, but we have to put ourselves in a position of being that item. And when you all of a sudden discover that in a moment of pain or problem or a tough situation, a family struggle, when you suddenly realize that in spite of all this, I have joy, then you realize that it's actually kind of a miracle, that what you're engaging in is something that is just a blessing, and it didn't come from you, it came from somewhere else. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't make a goal of having joy in my life. And everybody in this, especially in this crazy world, in this moment, you look at it and you say, man, I could just use a little peace. I just want some peace in my life. And again, you can't just manufacture it. You can't just say, well, I want peace, so I'm going to take a half hour out of my day and I'm going to just sit and think, or I'm going to meditate, or whatever it is. But when you finally find that moment when you say, yeah, I think I have some peace in my life, the circumstances aren't the issue, really. But you do have to decide, number one, to get it, to kind of go after it, to strive for it. And then once you see a little piece of it, you have to, the word I use is abide. It's a kind of a biblical, a bigger term to say I'm living in it. I'm going to live in that spot as much as possible. Like at your house, well, you're not abiding if you go out and you go to work, and yet you still live there. You go out and you do your thing. You go conquer the world. In our case, we call it slay the dragons. I'm going out to slay the dragons today, but I still abide in that same place of peace. And the house is a good example of how that might look. But it's completely internal and almost miraculous. Okay, all that said, where's it come from? Well, it doesn't come from me. I have to ask the guy that created it. I have to ask him for it. And then when I get a little piece of it, I get a little glimpse of it, he'll, especially if I'm asking, he'll teach me how to do better. He'll teach me how to get more. And anyway, that's those two items. The issue of fullness is something that we can plan a little more for, I believe. And everybody wants to feel like they're doing something in this world to make a difference. And fullness is that part of that. Fullness is realizing that I have a little joy, I have a little peace, I have some of my, for lack of a better term at this moment, goals in life. I'm moving forward. So everybody has I think the term I used last night when we were talking was, everybody has a document in their own heart, their own life that has been written already, and they know the answer if they just read their own document of what fullness means to them. And it hardly ever has anything to do with money, hardly ever has anything to do with not fighting with the world. Matter of fact, it might mean an awful lot to do with being contrary in some ways to how the world around you functions. So there's a nutshell of what I think we're looking at there.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I think is going on in the world is that, people are searching for some sort of significance, I guess is probably a fair way to put it, instead of fullness, and significance can be a good thing when it's pointed in the right direction. Right. But, fulfillment is a word that we throw around a lot. And we talk a lot about it on this show. And, that feeling of fulfillment and in the conversation that we had last night, I think that, the difficult thing for people to do is to balance that fullness, right? Like, how do you get fullness in the different aspects of your life? And, some of what we talked about last night was like, that fullness of, family, of making sure that, first and foremost, for both of us, it's feeling full in our faith, right? And that is the foundation of everything else, because if you don't have that balance and that fullness, first and foremost, then everything else kind of gets a little wonky, right? And then, as we just said, second is fullness in the family, like feeling that fullness. And then behind that, you have all the other things in your life, your business and your relationships and all these other things. And so how do you balance all of that? And, I asked you this question last night, and I didn't want to dig into it too much last night because I wanted to save it for everybody to hear this morning. But how do you balance those things? And what advice would you give for people, who are obviously, a lot of people that watch this show or are going to watch this video are running businesses, and they're balancing families with that. And they're trying to get all of that that I just mentioned there right. What advice would you give those people to create fullness in all of those areas?
Well, again, that's a huge question. go back, I think, to what you already know. Again, you're looking at the document of your own life, and you know what's fullness to you. You know, the way that, here's a way to put it, the way God made you to be, the person God made you to be. And you already know, or at least you're beginning to know, what that looks like for you. Some people, fullness is a productive day where you've checked off everything on the list, and you can put a win at the end of the day. For me, it's did I put the others around me in a position to succeed? Did I give them enough information? Did I give them everything they needed? And did I handle the struggles, the problems, and the good things? Did I handle those well? Most of the fullness that I look for in my life have come from a series of decisions that happened way back when I started deciding. Let me give you an example. When I started in business, quit my minimum wage job and started in business, I was working 6 and 7 days a week because I thought that's what you do. You go, you get the job done, you collect the check, and you move forward a little piece at a time. And man, not to anybody that knows my story, by the time I was 25, if I had a whole house full of kids, and I think by the time the third or fourth one came along, my wife literally sat me down one day and said, there's two things I need you to know, that the guys that work for you, the problems you created are not their problems. They're your problem to solve. And so working Saturdays, if they would prefer not to, they have families too. And I said, number two, she said, this family that we've created together, they need you. So I understand that sometimes you have to work Saturdays and very rarely a Sunday, but you've got to realize that when you're done working, this family needs you, and I can't raise them on my own. They need their father around. And about the same time, I did some work with a brother-in-law, and he didn't give a lot of great advice, but the one advice he gave me is, if you can't do it in 5 days, then you need to change what you're doing, because you need some time to yourself, time to recharge. And even though that's not 100% true in every week of our life, that concept holds true. That we do need time to think, and just to relax, and just to actually reflect the things that we say are important in our life, and to reap the rewards of that decision to have fullness, to have a full life. I chose being a contractor. I could have worked any number of places. I could have worked in a 9-to-5 job and been home every day at 5:30. I could have. It would have driven me crazy, but I could have done that. And so my choice was to, in essence, to put a lot of hours in, to be in a seasonal business, and to live with all the consequences, good and bad, of what that meant, right? And that's what most people on this stream are doing, is they're like, oh man, can't believe I'm up even watching this show. I got things I need to be going to do right now. So
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Well, I think we all have that feeling, man. Right. Like, and one of the things, again, that we briefly touched on last night in our discussion is kind of that, how people balance that. I think that we all have that internal compass. We all know when we're doing too much, and we all know when that moment comes when our family needs us, and we all know, when we're going a little overboard. And I think it goes back to, that balance of all the things that are important, and making sure that those priorities stay in line the way that they should, right? With faith, family, and everything else. And so I think that we all spend moments where those priorities get out of whack, right? And I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's something like, you know, when we think we're in control, God kind of chuckles and, you know, allows us to make the mistakes that we're about to make, something along those lines, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, it's those priorities and making sure that we are in pursuit of the right things, that we are in pursuit of that fullness that you describe. And, you know, one of the things that I think is so important in today's world is that fullness is not attached to any financial gain. And people, you know, are always seem to be chasing that. And by the way, me included, and I'm sure in some ways you included, right? In the back of your mind, it plays a role, but it will not provide the fullness that we're talking about. It, you know, it is a piece of the puzzle. It is not the puzzle. And so you know, what do you have to say to that? Because I know you're on social media, so you probably see some of the same things that I do with people giving advice about, you know, just chasing money or, you know, chasing big dreams, and that's okay. Everybody has to have dreams, but that balance of money versus what's really important.
Well, that's a long process for most of us, you know, and it's such a piece of our life that it seems to revolve around it, you know, literally most of the time. And our decisions are based on productivity, which creates more dollars, or deciding between one product or another that may create more dollars, or a better reputation, which creates more dollars. And it's a tough thing. But what I have to go back to is what is my why? What is my why for doing this? And my why for doing this, like I said at the beginning, is putting people around me in a position to succeed. And succeed, of course, isn't dollars. And yet the guys that work for me, if they can buy homes, if they can get to their goals, first I have to know them. I have to have a conversation, figure out what they are. And if I can help them, then that's the reason for sitting up early in the morning. Usually it's 4:25 or so for me. I put my feet on the floor and I go out and I do a quick workout, right? So that's the why. And of course, my grandkids, I want to see them, you know, I'm 57 years old and I want to see them all graduate high school. All the ones I have now, I want to see them maybe go to college. And that's something that I need to be working on now. Well, that's just a microcosm of what it's like to go through your day. So you got to think, okay, like you say a lot on your other platforms, work it backwards. If I need to be alive, and thriving in 20 years so I can go to my newest granddaughter's graduation from college or whatever it is, then what do I have to do today to accomplish that? And that means make wise decisions. That means reflect a little bit. That means do a good job on what I'm doing on today. And that may mean not eat ice cream twice a day, you know, cut it down to
Sometimes it's that simple.
Yeah, cut it down to ice cream once every couple of days, you know, or something. so it is kind of that simple. One thing that a phrase I've heard, Zig Ziglar says it a lot. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
Stick with the simple. And you have to kind of put that in perspective for yourself. I always tell people the best advice I give to my kids, anybody, is, you know, if you ask God his opinion, he's not actually bashful. He's a gentleman. He's not going to go push his opinion on people. But if you ask him his opinion, it doesn't take long and he starts sharing it with you. And that's not to say you're going to love what he says, because it's going to be about giving. But the guy that put BNI together, Business Networking International, one of his favorite statements is givers gain. Those that give, there's gain on the other end. That's probably not the best reason to do it, but that also builds a habit of seeing that it's true. And then you start giving to others, and you start making the phone call to a friend, just inputting in people's lives, customers, whoever you can spend a moment with, and it'll gain you their trust. It may not gain dollars and cents right now, whatever, but you'll walk away saying, I don't care if I get the job. That was a great conversation, no matter what. So
I think what you're describing is you'll walk away a little more full.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is what we're all pursuing. And people that aren't givers, they dip their toe in giving and wonder why they don't get. And because it's not about the one time, right? It's about creating a pattern of giving, of constantly helping. So great stuff, man. Great stuff. So last night, we're almost at the end of our time here. So last night we spoke about one of both of our favorite things that Ed Milet says, and he talks about how on our last day we get where we're going, and we get introduced to the person that we could have been and should have been had we used our full potential in life. So if we actually became the person that we were meant to be, we get introduced to that person, and our job in life is to chase down that person, right? To work hard every single day to make sure that we genuinely become the best version of ourselves. And I wanted to get your perspective on that, kind of how he puts that, how that impacts you, and then how that has evolved for you over, your lifetime, over a 20-year, 30-year period, how that has become clearer to you, and what drove that clarity.
Well, I've always kind of had that mindset in my mind, mostly because other men in my life, thankfully, mostly from church, some businessmen, some just guys I met there, were excuse me, good examples to me, and good examples of fathers, and encouraged me in business. The many times that I literally was ready to quit, I had a lot of father types coming to me and saying, I wish I'd have done what you're doing. My advice is to stick with it because you're going to be okay. And man, did I appreciate that. So that it's like our perspectives on broader things almost can't come from ourselves. We get too muddled with what we're doing day to day, and our own emotions and our own feelings, and sometimes we feel buried, and someone else can crack open the edge of it and let us see a little bit of light. So I just realized recently that guys my own age or older than me that could mentor me, I don't have very many in my life. And so there's a couple of them I just recently have reached out to. And I think that's a good part of the process that anybody can be with me on, to understand that we can't do it. We can't get to where we're going alone. And you say it all the time, if you want to go far, go with others. But you got to choose the right others.
Yeah.
I don't have very many businessmen in my life that literally have had faith and done their business based on the faith for decades. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to find those people to help me figure out to go to the next level. But I want to be like that guy that I meet in heaven and say, oh, you're what I'm supposed to be, and I want to look something like him. What God created me to be. I want to be as close as I can to what that guy would look like. And other people, I think, are a key to that. I think that's a long process. When I started in business, Brian, and some of the older men out there was nobody. There was no help. It was all competition. It didn't matter what part of the country you were in. Everybody felt like everybody had an angle. And you got to realize I've been through 4 recessions. And so there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of the older men in my life when I was young, they were kids during the Depression. So they'd seen hunger, real honest to goodness hunger. And so anyway, find people. And then the other thing that I've helped create a little balance in my life is, if I didn't do good yesterday or last year or in the last moment, you might have some things about that you need to fix, but man, you got to stop feeling guilty. So just from a spiritual perspective, a faith perspective, is one of the tools that God uses to help us right the ship, to do a better job, is guilt. But one of the tools that are the enemy of our soul, the devil uses against us, is guilt when it's ill placed. And he'll make us think about how poor we did, or how we did so poorly, or we we blew it, we offended people, or we blew up at somebody. And he wants us to feel guilty, so we're defeated. And we gotta reject that. And that is sometimes a physiological decision, to raise our eyes and go fix the problem with the person. Because those problems are all with people. And so we've got to stop feeling guilty about not using our planner yesterday. Oh man, I forgot. No, it doesn't matter. Use your planner today. Rewrite your goals today. I forgot to do the thing I was committed to with my wife or whatever. Say, go talk to her about it, but do better. Just put it in your schedule, put it in your mental checklist to do better today, and quit thinking about the past and being guilty. Guilt will ruin you.
Amen. That's all I could say to that, because it is, I think, something that everybody battles, right? And especially, when you're on a mission and you're really trying to get somewhere, and you're just hustling hard, right? And you got these big, massive goals, and the method to the madness in achieving those is failure. And people don't realize, man, like how many times, it's why I have so much respect for those people who, we all look up to, right? People that, have made it or done it the right way, and they've made it in business. Because at this point in my life, and I think that the perspective that you gain as you're really trying hard to get there, is you start to not see the result as much as you respect the result, but you start to picture in your mind how many challenges and how many failures and how many times they probably almost quit that person went through to get there. And to your point, it's that balance, right? It's like, I guess they probably call it the X factor of like being able to hold yourself accountable and knowing that you need to do better, but at the same time, not carrying that weight with you, and being able to move on. And because when we carry that weight, it impacts every aspect of our life, right? It impacts our family, it impacts our faith, it impacts, all the things that are important to us. It's stealing that joy from those moments because we're living, in the past, and we're not trying to we're not at that point trying to chase that better version of ourselves. We're trying to chase it backwards. And, that doesn't work. The only way you can chase that person is forward. Right. And, I think that was one of the most impactful things that I've heard in my life was like, what is that version of yourself? What does that person really look like? And that it's such an interesting thought to have every day, is like, what am I really chasing down? What does that guy or girl look like? And, how can I get there? And I think everything that we talked about this morning is a piece of that, right? It's, getting that fullness, focusing on, the right things, that big three is really important to be able to have that version of yourself be the case. You have to have peace in your life. You have to have joy in your life. And those things create the fullness that we're all chasing. All right. So you got 2 minutes to give everybody on this stream some advice on the topic of the week here, family. But most importantly, I think it's also important to recognize family in today's world, right? What is the difference between family today and 20 years ago is very different. So 2 minutes to give everyone advice on family in today's world.
Well, for me, this isn't going to sound very much like family. When I give this piece of advice, it's going to sound a little bit like preaching, probably. But for me, it's been the key. In my mid-20s, I felt like I was failing everybody. And I came to a point where I said, I have to figure out what's going on in my life, in today's struggles, in, why did I fail so bad in the past week or past month? And I had a house full of kids, and I was on my, in sports, if you're on your heels, you're of no use to anybody around you. If you're leaning forward on your toes, but I was not in my life. I was on my heels. And I got some advice. We've always gone to church, and thank goodness for that. I got some advice that said, I think what you need to do is just read scripture every day, because the idea is to have some good input. And so for me, a commitment came 30 years ago that said every day of the rest of my life, I'm going to get some input. A great, way to explain that is most of us, especially in this business, as we're grinding through, most of us take vitamins. Most of us take something extra, a protein drink, something. And we know the difference if we don't. We see it within a day or two. And if you don't do it, you probably should, because literally it's going to help you have a better attitude and more energy. But so for me, to simplify it, and it's oversimplified probably, is that little bit of scripture every day is like my vitamin. If I don't take it within a day or two, I notice it. I'm not the person I should be. And so for me, I made a commitment 30 years ago that every day, just to use a phrase, I'm going to crack the book. I'm going to open the book just a little bit, and I'm going to get something out of it. Because my input today is what's going to develop the success later. And again, it's not about dollars. It's mostly about relationship. And if I have the right input, then my relationships, at least an improving relationship, is possible. So get good input, guys. That's the main thing. And for me, that's a little bit out of the Bible. That's a devotional of some kind. At very least, listen to some sermons as I'm going out to what I'm doing. Our local radio station has all morning is different people talking about different things. And I can catch bits and pieces of those. And almost every day there's something relevant. But the relevancy is not the issue. It's the habit. Is what I'm allowing in, is the end result, is the result going to be better? So that's my 2 minutes of preaching, and that's going to improve family. All those things are a trickle down. What you and I talked about last night is, if you do the right thing over and over and over again, even if it's not the most productive thing as far as what it says in our planner, or what it says in as far as business goes, it doesn't matter. It's actually going to work. And that's the miracle of it. I love miracles. I love them.
Man,
I'm a walking miracle. So
it is always great to talk to you, man. When I go back, I talk about like real life miracles, and I'm as you know, now that you know me, I'm pretty good at getting back to people, on social media and stuff when people are talking to me. And a few years ago, when your son reached out to Top Contractor School on DM, I never responded to him. And thank goodness he had the tenacity to keep after it and connect us, make that connection so that we could be here today, man. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart, man. You guys, you personally, your entire family means the world to me and to my family. And I am honored to get to introduce you to all of these people and share your wisdom and share your knowledge. And I just so grateful, man, to have you in my life. So thank you for being here. Thank you for getting up at 4:30 in the morning to share. I know you don't think anything of that, but it means a lot to the people on here, and it means a lot to me. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. And to everybody that watched, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for all the comments. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't share this one out. So if you haven't shared this out yet and you're still watching, please share it out. Share it to a group. Share it to your page. Let's get this message out to people, because I think that at this point in time in the world, man, so many people need some perspective. They need some direction. They need some, foundation and grounding in their life to be able to connect better with their family, to connect better with the world, and to connect better with themselves is even part of what we talked about today. So thank you guys all for being here. Again, thank you, Mr. Callaway. I love you, man, and appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being part of my life. So until tomorrow morning, guys, I will see you right here, same place, same time, 7:30 a.m. on Morning Perspective. Love you guys.